Welcome back, folks, to Burning the Ships, and today I've got Mr. Tim Vitale on the podcast. Tim is, he's got, like many of our guests, he's got his own Burning the Ship story, and his is one very similar to mine as far as timeline and stuff like that. He'll get into all that in the episode. What I find very fascinating about Tim is his story, as he goes through it, you'll hear this, but it is filled with consistency and finding his way through consistency and providing value. So he'll talk on all that. Tim Vest currently lives in Wilmington, North Carolina, but he's from Connecticut. He talks about how he came from a family that was heavily involved with real estate, but didn't necessarily share all of that knowledge and experience with him as he grew up. So he went into the corporate world, finance, insurance, things like that, and just he'll get into his story, but ultimately led him to a path of getting into real estate, diving headfirst into that, and over a period of time, just the more he learned and researched and took some action, he worked his way where he wasn't financially really able to leave his career, so he'll get into all of that, but he just did it. He literally burned the ships, moved down to Wilmington, North Carolina. He's a beach person, he and his wife, and since that time, he's gotten heavily into the commercial real estate space and now owns over 2,000 rental units across the country. So he is a great example of taking action, being consistent with those actions, and then letting it compound over time. So I'm excited to introduce Tim and let him share his story, and hopefully, and I know it will to some of y'all listening, but you get some inspiration and motivation out of it, because Tim, as he'll say it himself, and just like I say and a lot of my guests say, we're nothing special, right? We're nothing special. We just have a vision, have a mindset, and we take action and don't let fear hold us back. So Tim's a great example of that. And with that, we will get it started. Tim Vitale, welcome to Burning the Ships, my man.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm kind of excited to do this. I love your logo on your hat, and I love what you guys stand for podcast. I think it's a really great idea. I know it resonates with a lot of people, so happy to be here to share my story. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, man, and I appreciate. I know we've been trying to coordinate this for a couple months now, and we took a little break we had a bunch of banked episodes, so we took a little break over the holidays. But I'm glad to finally get you on here, and I know I can't wait to get into, like, you had a legit burning the ship story, and I've heard it on other shows you've been on, and I'm excited to share that story or let you share it. And then everything you've done. I mean, gosh, in a matter of just a few years, you've built a pretty powerful real estate portfolio model, and just your presence, just an outsider kind of following along with what you're doing. Y'all have got the Facebook page and group, and you add so much value with your lives that you do, every so often, and it's very clear to me, and we'll get into it because I want to kind of know more about the motivation behind it. But it's very clear that one of your biggest motivators is inspiring and adding value, right? And I would imagine you built your business around that mindset. So
100% around it.
Yep. So with that, in the intro, I kind of told a little bit about the high level of your story, but I want to turn it over to you, Tim, and just let you take it wherever you want, but kind of walk through who you are, kind of where you came from, your story, and how it evolved into where you're at today.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it pretty brief because I don't want to bore too many people with, the complexities of it all. Right. Because, in here, I'll preface this with one thing is, like, when you do an abbreviated story like this, you really don't grasp the whole timeline of what it took and how long it takes and, like, the grind and all that kind of stuff. But I'm originally from Bridgeport, Connecticut, as you mentioned in the intro. And I found UNC Wilmington, where I live now in Wilmington, North Carolina, because it was half price down south and on the beach. And it was 75% women, 25% guys. So I was like, oh, I'm out of here. I'm out of the frigid north and I'm going south. So I went to college down here in the Carolinas, and I lived here for about 5 years. I moved up to Manhattan. I got a job on Wall Street working for W.R. Berkley Insurance, doing finance and accounting. And then I lived in Manhattan for 2 years, moved down to Charlotte for about 6.5 years. And that kind of took us from 2013 all the way up to 2021, that period, right? So living in Manhattan, that's a big chunk, right? Yeah. So, I mean, that's super glossed over. But yeah, so, 6.5 years, I worked in Charlotte for that company in Manhattan. I started out as a staff accountant, entry-level staff accountant, and worked up to senior accountant, then accounting manager, and then assistant vice president. And I was 28 years old when I got when I got promoted to assistant VP. And I thought I was big dog, man. I thought I was like, oh, yeah, I made it. Like I did everything everybody told me to do. I worked hard. I got to the top of the food chain. It's anything with a VP in the title. I was like,
Right.
You're getting close, right? And it was December 2018. I turned 28. I was 28 in December 2018. I got the promotion, and my boss brought me out to lunch to tell me, she was like so excited. She was like, I got you promoted to AVP, and we're going to give you a 3% raise. And I said, wait, what? Huh? And I said, her name was Jen. I was like, Jen, it's a little low, isn't it? And she goes, what do you mean? And I was like, I mean, I thought this is when you start making like 50, 100% raises, like making life-changing money. And I was like, how am I going to buy a house on the water? And, it's always been on my dream board, a 72-foot Viking sport fisher. You're not buying a 72-foot Viking sport fisher on a $100,000 a year salary. You're just not. And I went from $99,000 and some change to like $103,000 a year. And I was like, wait, whoa, this doesn't work for me. Like, this ain't working. So in January of 2019, we drove from Charlotte to Wilmington because we were going to go just visit some friends that lived here in Wilmington because we love it here. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been
I
to
have.
Wrightsville. Oh, dude, I love Wrightsville Beach. I think Wrightsville Beach is going to be the next Jupiter Island if
Right.
it's not already. I mean,
Right.
you really can't buy a house there less than $10 million. And it's absolutely insanely expensive on Wrightsville Beach. Sorry, you can buy stuff that's less than 10 million, but it's not really what you want to be living in, kind of thing.
Mhm.
So that brought me. We listened to the famous Rich Dad Poor Dad, and my wife's in the passenger. She was my girlfriend at the time. My wife's in the no, actually, sorry, 20. This was 2019. We were married then, guys. Don't mess that up. So she was my wife.
Well, listen, hopefully.
No, she was my wife, and we were driving from Charlotte to Wilmington, and we're listening to Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it's like every 10 minutes she looks over and she goes, she wrote this book about you. This is you. This is you. And it was just like epiphany moment after another. And my family up in Connecticut is a real estate family. Like my grandfather and his brothers, they owned a lot of mixed use commercial real estate. So, their motto always was the apartments the triple net spaces, they paid the taxes and the insurance and the mortgage and the rents upstairs. That's what you live off of. That's as simple as it was. That's what
Right.
they lived off of. So they owned a bunch of commercial real estate and hair salons and, and a bunch of things. So my family was around it all the time. Like each one of my uncles did a trade. My dad was the handyman, so he was the jack of all trades. So, I had one uncle did plumbing, electrician, HVAC. My dad was the handyman that did kind of everything, Everybody worked for the family. I come from a large Italian family up in Connecticut, and, you work for the family, you keep the money in the family. I frequently say that to my partner, Tim Vest, all the time. I say, hey, you know what, as long as we're keeping the money in the family, I'm fine with it, right? If it's more expensive, that's okay. But I'd rather pay somebody I know than somebody I don't.
Right.
So always keeping the money in the family. So I was comfortable with real estate, and I understood it. Then more things started going off the when I started paying attention. I was doing the books for my grandmother, where she had like 12 rentals. It was like 4 properties, and they're completely paid off. And she had she's making good money, like, good money. And I was like, Graham, you're sitting in your chair all day, not doing nothing, making all this money that you guys are living off of. Yet I'm over here working 70 hours, 60, 70, 80 hours a week to make $100K a year. And she was like, yeah, but you work for a great corporation. You have good insurance. I was like, I don't care about that, So it was always there. It was always there for the taking, and I never really paid attention to it. Rich Dad, Poor Dad kind of opened my eyes to it. The one statement that's kind of burns in my head that he says in his book is, you work January to May to pay your taxes to the government. Yeah. I was like, oh, yeah. That hurts, man. Like, you put that, if anybody's listening and you're in the accounting and finance world, in the first 5 months of the year, you have year-end close, and then you have, which takes like 90 days, and then you have Q1 close. Like, you really don't get a break for 4 months, and it is like, wow, I literally work the hardest part of the year to pay the taxes. I was like, This sucks. Right. Like, this sucks. And I was like, this doesn't work for me. So I started looking into real estate, started listening to podcasts, and I found Bigger Pockets, started listening to all of those, started going to meetups for like, flippers and burr investors and all that kind of stuff in Charlotte.
And let me stop you. So when you say you started doing these things, you read the book that lit the fire. I was very similar in that. And then you started listening to all the podcasts, reading the books. Was that legit? Just started? Like, you just started much of that?
Nothing. January 2019.
And then you rolled. Okay.
Yep. January 19 was the light switch moment of like, I got to do something different because this ain't working for me. Right. I ordered a bunch of books on, you can't really see it, but they're all on my rack right back there. It was like how to estimate rehab costs, how to buy property, how to do this, I had to learn the lingo. I didn't really know anything about anything. So that was January 2019, and I struggled and I struggled and I struggled to find a deal. I ended up buying my first property, which was a condo in Belmont, North Carolina, which is just outside of Charlotte. And that was November 2019. So my first foray into actually owning a property was November 2019. And I bought it. I met it. The way I found it was I was working with an agent, and I found a property online, and I was like, oh, this property I really like. And then I went and saw it, and he was like, look, man, if you don't make an offer of like, it was like $130,000 cash, you're not getting it. And I was like, but why? How? And I was like, it didn't end up working. And I asked him the question. I was like, hey, does this lady have anything else she's interested in selling? He goes, you know what? Nobody else has really asked me that, and I kind of like you. So I'll show you 3 other places that she wants to sell after this one, and I'll let you take a pick. So he showed me this condo, and he was like, if you want it, you got to figure out how to come up with $76,000 cash to buy it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to figure this out because I'm a real estate investor, and I got to stop like making offers and not making it work, et cetera, and so forth. So first condo I bought was $76,000. I took a 401k loan, which I think I maxed out at like $30K. I had like $20,000 in my savings account. I took a personal loan from American Express for like $25,000, and my dad lent me like $20K or something. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was 4 different sources that I took loans out and borrowed and IOUs and all this kind of stuff. So I got to closing, I had $76,000. I bought my first property. I paid cash for it, so there's no appraisal, no bank process, et cetera and so forth. But when I walked it, I was like, wait a second, this is listed as a 2-1, but I got in it, and it's like, wow, this is actually a 3-1.5. I'm brilliant. I'm the best real estate investor ever. Like, everything they talk about in Bigger Pockets, it's happening to me, right? So I was like, this is it. This is my big break. I'm going to start to make a change. So I buy it. And with single family stuff, you have to have a bit of a seasoning period so that you can refinance it. So I ended up remodeling the bathroom because that needed some work, and I did some other things around the property. I spent maybe $5,000 or $6,000, not a whole lot of money. I was all in for about $84,000, and it was January 2020 now. At this point, it was. I know that it's only about 45 days later, but because I paid cash, I could refinance on my cost. Right. So so whatever the cost was, they would give me a percentage of that. So I ended up getting in the appraisal. And what really got me upset was on the appraisal, it said that the income-based approach was a $100,000 property and the comp-based approach was $76,000. And I was like, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. I was like, this is an income-producing property for me. It's a rental. And the mortgage loan officer, who's a very good friend of mine, even to this day, he was like, no, you can only use the income-based approach for properties that are 5 units and up. It looks at the income and the expenses and, to get an NOI. I was like, wait, that makes a lot of sense to me because I come from the accounting and finance world. So I ended up refinancing that property and I left like $19,000 in it. It really was not a whole lot of cash. But I paid back my dad with interest. I paid back the personal loan. I ended up not paying back the 401k loan because that was paying interest to myself. So I was keeping it in the family, paying interest to myself. I was okay with that. So I really was making $100 a month, $150 a month. It was nothing. And I was like, wow, it took me 11 months to buy this property to make $100 a month.
Yeah.
I was like, it's going to take me 100 years to get to $10,000 a month. So I started at that point when I heard about the income-based approach, I started doing some Googling and I found apartments and I was like, that's interesting. I like, everyone always talks about multifamily scale. And I was like, well, let me look at that. So I read David Lindel's Multifamily Millions book, if anybody's read that. And it was early 2020, sitting out on the front porch, smoking a cigar, reading this book. And I've said, this is it. And I cut the cord with the single family stuff. And from that point forward, I was all in on commercial real estate. And I stopped going to those meetups. I joined all the Facebook groups online, started networking with anybody anybody that would talk to me, through instant social media platforms, right?
So Tim, now the reason I want to stay on the timeline is because I'm going to tie it all back at the end because this is, it's very important. So you make the shift, you buy the first house, 2020 or
November 2019.
And then, as you get into 2020, you made the shift to multifamily. So now you're all in, all the things you did to learn everything about single family and your next move there. Now you were pouring that same mindset into learning everything multifamily, right? Okay.
Correct.
Got it.
Yep.
2020.
Yep. So from that point forward, I cut the cord with the single family stuff and I was all in a multifamily. So what I would do from that point forward was I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I would read. And I would read books on, David Lindel's book and, Sam Zell's book. I got a whole library over here of books. I would get up and I'd read from 5 to 7:30. So 2.5 hours every single day I would read. Then I'd do my day job from like 8 to 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night. I'd make dinner. And then until 9, 10, 11 o'clock, I would be networking with people. I'd be on Zoom calls. I'd be doing whatever I could do to kind of meet people in the Carolinas that were doing what I wanted to be doing. And I did that for forever, right? So long story short, cut to January 2020 made the shift of saying, okay, I'm going to go into commercial real estate. Cut to buying my first apartment complex, August 2021. So it's 18 months later, give or take? Yeah. No, a little longer than that. 12 months of 2020 and 8 months of 2021. So 20 months later, almost 2 years later, to get into my first commercial real estate deal, which was a 92-unit apartment complex in Statesboro, Georgia, with two of my friends now, Jennings and Yaden Smith.
Oh yeah, I'm good friends with both. Yeah.
Yeah. So I helped. So I got involved in their network, and a lot of people always ask. The biggest thing Tim Brotz always talked about was provide value. So I ended up latching on to Jennings and Yaden, providing value to them in the form of helping them grow their Facebook group. That was value, right? And I didn't have any value in commercial real estate. I didn't have any investors. I couldn't sign loans. I wasn't getting any deal flow. I could underwrite deals, and I knew finance and accounting, but I didn't have any experience. So I ended up just kind of being around them all the time. And I just, I ended up becoming really good friends with them. We would text and kind of, keep up with it, et cetera, and so forth. And, that was 20 months of waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, going to bed at 10, doing real estate stuff on the weekends, like driving to properties, touring them, underwriting them, making offers, like pounding my head against the wall, trying to figure out how I get into my first commercial real estate deal. And I got into my first commercial real estate deal by providing value to somebody else that was trying to do something, that tried to grow something. And I found that, and obviously it's easy to look at in hindsight now, but that was a very long period of my life where I almost quit in May of 2021. I was invited into a GP team, and then I was uninvited into it. I like, did due diligence. I raised money. I did all of the things, and they're like, "Oh, sorry, we don't really need you anymore." It's like, what? So then at that point, I almost quit. I ended up taking like a week off, and I was like, I didn't come this far to come this far. I'm not a quitter. And, literally 60 days later, I'm invited into my first deal, closed on my first deal. Okay, this is where things get really fun and exciting, and the whole burn the ships part comes into play here. And I had to build that story, right? Because you really have to understand the timeline of like where you started, January 2019, buying the first deal. What made you switch to commercial real estate instead of single family real estate? Like most people stay in single family, and then graduate to multifamily like, 10 years from now. And I skipped that whole phase.
Right. That's why I keep asking about the timeline.
Yeah. So, right. So then, 20 months later, that's how long it took me to get into my commercial real estate. So really 3 years to get into my first commercial real estate year. August 2021. September 2021, I quit my W-2 job.
Okay.
October 2021, I sell my house in Charlotte, and I moved to Wilmington, North Carolina, to live off the equity that we had in the house. Because it was like $150,000, and I was like, my wife, I give all the credit to my wife here. She's the one that suggested we sell the house so I could go full-time in the real estate business. I had closed my first deal. I had closed another deal in that time period. I had 2 more under contract with other partners and things like that. And I could see the tunnel. I could see the path. I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. And my wife's like, you know what? We've been trying to move back to the beach. You're miserable at your W-2 job. You've been working around the clock for 2-3 years now. She was like, I want you to be successful. I want you to be happy. Let's sell the house. We'll live off the money in the house. We'll downsize. We sold everything. I mean, we had a brand new house. We sold everything. We moved in from 2,800 square foot house that we had built brand new down into an 1,100 square foot apartment. And it felt like we were starting life all over again. And we did.
But you were in a very cool area.
In Wilmington. Yeah. We're like, oh, this was meant to be. Like, so you also can't see the surfboard on my left. One of my goals was I wanted to move back to Wilmington so that I can surf again. And I had this custom board made, it's in like it's in UNCW teal, and it's got my name on it and all this other kind of stuff. And it was kind of very symbolic for me to like accomplishing my goal of like getting back to the beach. And so that was October 2021. It was Halloween. We moved back to Wilmington. And from 2021 until today, now we have a 2,000 unit apartment portfolio. I have a property management company. We self-manage about 1,400 units. We got 33 employees, I think, at this point. We have the real estate coaching business, making moves in multifamily. We have the Facebook group that we do social media content for every single Tuesday. Tim and Tim Tuesdays at 10. It has grown rapidly, but it's because of that pivotal point in my life where we took the risk. We burned the ships and said, I'm going to live off the equity that I have in the house. And that's enough money to live off of for 2 years. And I was like, if I can't put any money into the account in 2 years, it was never meant to be.
So you're not going to be able to see this. I've got goosebumps right now. You can't see it because of my hairy arms. But you're hitting on a lot of things that, are identical to what I had to go through from a mindset standpoint. So I did not realize, and I'm going to go back before what I'm getting ready to say in a minute, but I did not realize when you cut ties with the W-2 career that the income was not there already replacing that, right?
Nope.
And that, I was in a similar situation, and now, great. It was a little bit different. I had young kids, so I had to have something kind of already built that so we had a huge net worth in single family property and a couple small multifamilies and some decent cash flow from the rentals from that, but it did not replace my income. But I had a big couple things. I had a lot of equity in my house, and I had a lot of savings from earning a good income for over the years and living pretty frugal. But I had that same mindset you talked about, where if I cannot live off this primarily, this nest egg I've built for in our situation, we had about a 4 to 5 year runway where we could not reduce our standard of living, be okay, and which gave me a window of time to build something to replace and be bigger than what I had. And if I didn't do that, then I don't deserve. I had that mindset. I don't deserve to be an entrepreneur if I can't do it in that amount of time. But I also knew that I had a skill set and a resume that I could fall back on and go back to work one day if I had to. So it sounds like, and people thought I was absolutely insane for thinking that way. But it sounds like you were thinking the same way. Like, all right, we're going to live off something. Essentially, what equity is, savings in the bank, essentially. We're going to live off this. I've got a 2 year runway, and I'm either going to make it, which I'm pretty confident I will, or I'll go back to work. What risk am I taking just doing this for 2 years? So walk us through that mentality of, and it sounds like you had good support from your wife, which is very important, but walk us through that, because there had to be a lot of emotions and mindset shifts and all that during that time.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I got into the finance career because I wanted that stability. I wanted to make sure I was making money. I wanted to make a lot of money, and I had always been told from my family of, go work for a good job, work up the corporate ladder, get paid benefits, make six figures, $100,000 a year. Means nothing nowadays, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that was single-handedly one of the most difficult things that I ever did, because I'm not going to lie to you, when my last day came, like I was super excited to quit my job, right?
Right.
When my last day came and you shut that laptop for the last time, I went downstairs and I cried
Yeah.
because I was afraid, man.
Right.
Like, you're like, dude, where's money going to come from? I have no idea. I was like, I think I can be successful here. I've seen what other knuckleheads in this industry are doing. Why can't I do? I know I can do it way better than they can, but I didn't have the I didn't really have the proof of concept yet. But I was like, my boss actually, she kind of made me make that decision, because she was like, hey, everybody's going to go back to the office. And I was like, oh, this is post-COVID. And I was like, you're going to fire me for not doing my job, because you're going to see how I'm on phone calls and doing this stuff. Like, I'm doing my job. I'm getting my job done, but I'm also like doing other things at the same time. And you're not going to be happy with that. So, it was like, I phoned a friend, I talked to my wife, and it was, hey, I never regretted quit my day job and going to work for myself. And and you set the prefaces, you set the stage for, this will be the most difficult thing you've ever done, but it will also be one of the most rewarding. Now, I just had a kid. She just turned a year old. That is a whole new level of hardest thing you've ever done.
Yep.
But when it comes to your personal, like professional life, quitting your W-2 job and going into business for yourself is kind of like the equivalent of having a child, where it's the most difficult but the most rewarding thing you've ever done.
For sure. And you have to pay attention to it, and you have to nurture it. You have to feed it. And I'm not talking about the child. I'm talking about the
business.
the business.
Right.
And
Right.
if you run away from it and disappear, the business potentially can die. So it is very similar to a child. I love that analogy, and I hadn't really thought of it that way, but you're exactly right. I want to go back to May of 21.
Oh, yeah. We're almost quit. Yeah.
You said you almost quit, and you kind of did for a couple weeks. I talk a lot about this. Tim Bratz, I've had conversations with him about this as well, but so many people put in so much work and so much grind only to quit before it takes off, right? How many potential millionaires, billionaires, didn't see it through and left a month, 2 months before things, could have taken off? And so you were right on the ledge in May of 21 of just saying, screw it, I'm going to keep working up this corporate ladder. And your life could be so much different than it turned out to be. But what brought you back in?
I had this what brought me back in is, I had that conversation with my wife, right? Like I took a week off. I was like, okay, I'm not going to wake up early. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I just needed a step to process the emotion of being excited about being invited into a deal by doing the work, taking the day off, doing the due diligence, doing all the things that I had dreamed of, and then being uninvited and just they're like, sorry, we don't value what you just did.
Yeah, it's a kick in the nuts, man.
It's a huge kick in the nuts. And it just took me a minute. It took me a couple days, just to really kind of process that. And I told myself, I asked myself, am I in the right industry? Like, I'm doing everything right. Is this a message from the universe or God or whoever of that I'm not supposed to be here? And there's also this other thing that I didn't even bring up. Was the other thing I started thinking about was, do I need to go back to school in order to get my master's degree and become a CPA if I want to progress my career? And I had applied for the school. I put in an email to them and, about applying, because I was an alumni, right? So they have different people that you talk to. And I emailed them like a year prior, and they never emailed me back about getting into the master's program. And I took that as so there was a sign, that was my sign of, you're not supposed to be in accounting. Like that was my sign of you're supposed to do something else. And that was kind of one of the driving factors of going into the real estate thing, was well, they never emailed me back. They never contacted me back. I put in the effort to, say that I wanted to join this thing. I wanted to go back to school. I put that out into the world, and it never came back to me. And I was okay, that's my sign that I'm not supposed to do this. Then I was that quintessential image of the two guys that were swinging the pickaxe. And one more swing of the pickaxe got you to the diamond. And then, the other guy, he quits right when it's like a hair thin. And I was like, I'm not going to be that guy. Because I looked at everybody else that was doing what I wanted to be doing. I was like, there's no reason why I can't do what they're doing. And I needed that break. I needed that week to kind of process emotions and kind of get my head back into it. And you know what? One thing after another, you put your head down, you stick with it. One of my favorite sayings is, I keep saying I'm going to do this, but I never have done it, is opportunity gets tired of persistence. Meaning that if you're persistent forever and ever and ever and ever, eventually opportunity will happen upon you, because opportunity is never lost. It goes to the next person. But it takes a certain level of education and maturity to be able to identify an opportunity. And if you're persistent enough to never quit, then eventually you'll be able to identify opportunity.
It's a squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what it is. And I don't care how poorly you are consistently doing something. If you're consistently doing something, it's going to happen, and while also you have to be aware enough, if you consistently do the same thing over and over and over and the needle's not moving, you also have to have some awareness, all right, let me educate myself. Let me hire a coach. Let me get in a group.
Correct.
Or in which, I want to touch on that too, because you did that. It sounds like a pivotal moment for you, or a pivotal decision, was to join a group, and you joined with Jennings and Yaden, and you didn't have and I see this within Legacy Family. I'm sure you do too, where a lot of people, and I'm in other masterminds as well, but a lot of people join and they just think things are going to happen from joining, right?
Yes.
And all this stuff is just now I'm paying the money, I'm around all these awesome people, and through osmosis, it's just going to happen. Yeah. And it doesn't work that way. You have to, there's two costs to joining a mastermind, in my opinion. I'm living proof of it. Sounds like you are as well. But the financial cost, you got to stroke a check every month or however they charge you to be a part of a group. And a lot of people that aren't familiar with that look at that, oh, you're buying friends. No, I'm not. I'm trying to join a network of people that are thinking and doing bigger things, so I can kind of borrow that belief. So number one is the financial cost. Number two is the cost of your time and input into that group, right? Mm-hmm. So when I joined Legacy Family, I knew I was paying for it, but and Bill and I, my partner, joined at the exact same time. We said, we're going to pour into this group. I don't know what value I can provide, but I'm going to meet people. I'm going to stay in touch with them. I'm going to beg them to let me be a part of what they have going on and ask where I can provide value to them. And the more you do that, just like you did with Jennings and Yaden, they see something and they say, okay, let's let this guy be a little bigger piece of this. And you provided more value. And it goes back to you, to get anything out of effort, you've got to be providing value. You can't just show up, right?
Yeah. But it's also, I'll challenge you there and say, like, you also can't be the person always begging for, how do I provide value? There has to be an intrinsic soul searching of, what value do I bring that somebody else needs?
Right.
And I know that truth be told, I never actually paid for a coach or a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
I surrounded myself with Jennings and Yaden. They were building that My First Million group. I showed up to every single StreamYard live one. I interacted. I engaged. I was in the group. One thing led to another. He just sent me a message on Facebook and I was like, hey, man, what's your number? I'd like to catch up with you one time. So we started texting, started calling, yada, 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 yada. And, he learned who I was and what I did. And this is over the course of months.
Yep.
And before they opened up their paid coaching program, this was, maybe 8 months later after we had become friends and I was just involved with them in their circle of people, right? He sends me a copy of the analyzer that they're going to include in their course. And he sends it to me and I called Jennings and Yaden and I'm like, guys, you can't sell this. This is, excuse my language here, so beep this out if you need. This is fucking awful.
Right.
Like, I'm embarrassed for you. This spreadsheet is the worst spreadsheet I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
And he was like, wow. And I was like, dude, this is trash. And so what I did, and I didn't, looking back at this now, like I can see like this is why I got in with them. But what I did was like, you know what? I love spreadsheets. I love analyzing deals. I love doing all these types of things. I took their spreadsheet, I put it into Google Sheets. I completely made a whole new one from scratch. It took me, God, it had to be 80 hours of work, right? And then one day I call him and I'm like, hey, you got a minute? Like, let's hop on a phone call. He goes, yeah, sure. I was like, I got something for you. And I showed him this spreadsheet and I was like, here, this is for you. I made this for you so you can include it in your course. And he's like, dude, this is incredible. And I was like, yeah, like I took a lot of pride in it. I was like, I probably put about 80 hours of work into it.
Right.
And, it might not be perfect, but it's a lot better than what you had. And we still use that spreadsheet today. And, there's constantly always updates, always formula tweaks. And I mean, it's never ending. It's not perfect, but it really does a great job. And they tried to pay me for it. And they're like, how much can we pay you for this? I was like, nothing. I don't want to get paid for it. It's something that I enjoyed doing. It was good exercise for me. I think you guys are going to get a lot of value out of it. And here, I did this for you. I just genuinely wanted to do this for you. And then like 90 days later, he was like, you know what? He was like, do you want to join the group? And I was like, yeah, I'm in. Here's my credit card. And then he charges me for the first month. And then he goes, actually, do you want to run the underwriting calls? And that was 2.5 years ago. And I do every Tuesday at 11 a.m. I run the underwriting calls. Like people in his group bring deals and I go through them. I challenge them on it. And I was like, look, if you can get me to say, I think this is a pretty good deal, then it must be a really good deal because I'm going to ask you the hardest questions because I'm an investor you're never going to get money out of. And I know what I'm talking about. So if you can answer all of my questions and you've done all your due diligence and it still pencils, you probably got something to work with here. Right. I've been doing that for about 2.5 years now, but that was the point of providing value to somebody that they were just like, this is the person that I need in my life. He went above and beyond. He provided value with asking nothing in return ever. And, it's the principles of the Go Giver book, right? Like always provide value and expect nothing back. And I just continually tried to do that in any way, shape, or form that I could for anybody that I looked up to. And just so happened, luck of the draw, right? There's always a little bit of luck with opportunity along the way. Just so happened Jennings and Yaden needed that in their lives, and I was there to provide it. I identified it. And obviously, looking back at it, I identified it. But I just genuinely wanted to do that. I wanted to genuinely provide value to people. And that's how I built my whole reputation. That's why investors trust me because I come from a financial background. I know my numbers. I know, you can sit there and challenge me on stuff and I know it inside out and backwards because I'm comfortable with it. So it makes it very easy for me to raise money from investors because I understand those types of things. And I take a lot of pride in my underwriting and how our deals are performing. And if they're not performing, I take ownership for that. I'm like, well, this is what I learned. This is why it's not working out. I apologize. I screwed up. I'm doing everything that I can to fix it. So, there's obviously there's level of transparency there with investors and partners and things like that. But yeah, I mean, that was the pivotal moment of providing value that, got me, Jennings and Yaden invited me into that deal. They actually called me, my birthday's July 30th. They called me July 30th, 2021. And Jennings is like, I got a birthday gift for you. I was like, oh, cool. What's that? He goes, I'm going to invite you into this deal. And he goes, I want you to help Yaden with the asset management and the on-site management, the property management, all that kind of stuff. And he was like, I'm going to give you 8% of the deal. He goes, you're not going to do it for free because I know that you're going to say that you don't want any equity or anything to do it. He goes, you're going to get 8% in the deal. And you're going to join the calls and you're going to run the property management and asset management side of things. You're going to be responsible for this deal. And then we closed on that deal August 13th, 2021. It was Friday the 13th in August. I'll never forget it. And that was it. Off to the races. First deal in the books.
A month later, leave your job. A month after that, move your home.
And 3 weeks later, I gave notice. And my last day was September 22nd. And then Jennings and Yaden did like this yacht event thing that when they had their boat. So I did that. And then I met Tim Bratz because he did one of those paid pop-up masterminds at the house in the mountains. Where's that? In Henderson,
North Carolina.
Yeah, North Carolina, whatever, the mountain house. So he did an event there, and then it was like that first, and that was it. It was off to the races.
Mm-hmm. So from there, and so I got a couple other points I want to get to, but I am curious. So you covered a big span from that to now, 2021, 4 years later, you're up to 2,000 units. Quickly go through that evolution. Like what specifically, because you got invited into that deal, but at this point, you're kind of sourcing your own deals. You're the main operator, and you're inviting people into your deals. And at this point, you got your property management.
Right.
Walk us through the evolution of all that, because I think it's important. And the reason I keep talking about how quick of a timeline, I think it's important for people that are listening that are just kind of hung up, not knowing, like, God, man, it just seems so much to get through and overcome and takes too long. It doesn't really when you surround yourself with the right people, and you're a great example of that. So how in 4 years do you go from being invited into a 92-unit deal to now 2,000 plus units and running a mega business?
Yeah, man, it was just dedication, honestly. And burning the ships was what enabled me to do that. So, yeah, I mean, so my mindset there was the best hours of your day are either going to be working for yourself or work for somebody else's goals and dreams and ambitions. And when you have a W-2 job, you're helping somebody else achieve their goals and dreams, not your own. So when I quit my W-2 job, we had closed 2 deals. We were closing our third one. We had 2 more under contract. So it was like by the end of 2021, early 2022, we would have done like 5 deals. And, you start getting some acquisition fees that kind of adds money to the bank, and you're like, cool, like this is working. And then I got scared again. Early 2022, I didn't make any money from early 2022 until like August 2022. Right. So there was like a span of 8 months where I didn't make anything. But thankfully, I had made a little bit of money up front. So I was, I had that money in the bank and it was kind of adding to the pot. The end of 2022, we ended up buying like 2 deals a month for 6 months.
Really?
And all of that was possible because of the 3 years leading up to getting up to my first deal. It was 3 years of building relationships. It was 3 years of meeting with investors, of associating myself with people that I wanted to be like. And then when it came time to leverage those relationships by power of association, one thing after another just kept happening for me, or because of all of the preparation that I did. And it was continually being able to pick up the phone and have a conversation with a new investor, going to a property and meeting with a broker, underwriting as many deals as I possibly could. I mean, when you first leave your W-2 job, that fire of like, I don't know where money's coming from, I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can, is never stronger. And you have this like, it's like a cat with his tail on fire. You are running from it as fast as you possibly can. And that's in effort, right? You're trying as hard as you can in order to build genuine relationships and continue to build on the momentum that you've already built, right?
Yep.
And that was incredible because from the end of 2022, I went from owning, partial ownership of like a couple hundred units to like almost 1,000. And then in 2023, we went from basically, we didn't really buy a whole, I mean, I can't even remember now, but
Yeah,
it's all over the place, right?
yeah,
In 20,
the rates were starting to bump up.
rates started to go up. I mean, things started to get difficult there. Funny enough, we decided to sell that deal in Statesboro, and then I was also the buyer of that deal in Statesboro.
Okay.
So I turned around from a minority ownership to the person signing the debt and raising all the money for that deal. I still own it today. Jenny Shingated bought it for $3.5 million. I bought it for $6 million, and I currently have it for sale for $10.5 million.
Okay.
So huge value add. Everybody made money along the way, which is great. But yeah, I mean, just opening up my schedule to be able to prioritize anything that was around my business is really what made things possible, what really made things happen. And, you're connected with a great network of people, and it's continuing to build those relationships. I mean, the people that I met at Tim Brotz's event in the mountains, the week that I quit my W-2 job, some of those people in that house are some of my largest investors today.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that didn't happen just by luck. It happened because I paid money to show up, to be there, to put in the effort. I kept up with the relationship. They followed me on social media, and they were like, you know what? He's the type of person I want to partner with long term.
Mm-hmm.
And, Tim Vest and I did about $100 million worth of deals before we built the property management company, and our company now is called Vive Equity, which stands for Vitale Invest. So Vitale Vest Equity. Vive Equity, Vive Property Management, we have Vive Construction, Vive LIHTC Compliance, which is Low Income Housing Tax Credit Compliance. We're full stop shop now, right? And continuing to try to evolve and become better and better and better, every week.
Love it. Two other topics I want to hit on real quick. Number one, let's start with you said you have a 1-year-old, girl or boy?
Girl. Her name is Coral.
Coral. I love that name, man.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So you mentioned earlier, you made a great analogy that I really hadn't thought about, but building a business similar to raising a child, right?
Yeah.
And so I wanna talk about that a little bit, because it's the most important thing in my life is the model I set for my kids, right? My kids are 13 and 8. Everything I do, it's top of mind. What are my kids learning from this? What are they going to be proud of this? That kind of. So I try to force my way into that thinking. Well, you have a 1-year-old, so Coral's not recognizing anything at this point, but speak to how important it is as she gets older and matures and starts really being a part and exposed to what you're doing, to set a great model and example and do all these things for her. It's different as a father than it is as just you and your wife, what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful for the decisions that I've made along the way. I mean, not everything's been great, but I'm happy to be where I am today, because I'm still in a rental, right? Like where I'm sitting today is a house that we rent. So we moved out of the apartment, we moved into this place which is a townhome, and we've been here for about 2 years, and we bought a piece of land, and now we're building dream house number 1. So that'll be about 12 or 15 months out. We're, going full custom floor plan and all that kind of stuff. But what I've been able to identify over the last year is how hard I worked and I grinded to get to this point is not how I want my daughter to perceive my business and my life.
Yep.
And a lot more of the decisions that I'm making today are, how do I reduce the amount of money that I'm making to get back more of my time? And it sounds so easy, right? Just hire somebody. And it's not that easy. Like, there's so much that falls on your shoulders to get to this point. But what I'm conscious of every day with a 1-year-old is making sure that I'm prioritizing my time with her when I can. So my business partners know, hey, 5 o'clock hits, don't call me. I'm from 5 to 7:30. You cannot get a hold of me unless it's absolutely urgent. But that's my time with my daughter, right? I only see her really for 2.5 hours a day. I see her for lunch and breakfast and that kind of stuff too, which, I'm grateful for, because I work from home. But I was like, I'm very intentional about spending time with her. I don't want to be an absentee dad. What's it say? You don't want to have a full bank account and an empty table.
Yep.
So I'm conscious of that. And
Right.
one thing, I'll say this here, is one thing that I was kind of disappointed in my family, and I've addressed it with my family, is that they had the ability to show me the way of how they make a living, and they never did. And I'm conscious of that to make sure that my daughter and her children and her children's children, I show her how to be involved in the business, and I teach her to be involved, and I'll let her decide if she wants to be
There you
involved
go.
or not.
Yeah.
I'm not going to just hand over the business if she doesn't want it, because I don't want her to be burdened by it. And maybe if I have another kid, maybe that kid will be interested in taking over the business or something like that. But what I am conscious of is I want her to be involved in understanding how I make decisions and why, because I don't want her to be like, oh, my dad doesn't cut the grass because he has somebody else come do it. Right. I want to show her why the highest and best use of my time is spending time with her and her mother. And then second yet highest and best use time is making good decisions in my business. And the very bottom of the pole is cutting the grass.
Right.
Now, if you enjoy cutting the grass, that's one thing, right? But if you just do it out of necessity, like 99% of people do, looking at hiring out some of those things, and so that you can spend time with where you want to. And I'm just more cognizant of how am I being perceived by a little one. And, it's like she'll be crawling outside in the loft, and she'll I can hear her right next to the door. And my wife's like, she puts her head to the ground and she tries to look through the crack of the door and says, Dada, and it's like that kind of stuff. It's like, I'll be on a phone call and I hear her. I'm like, hold on, pause. My daughter's coming in, and that is far more important than anything we're discussing right now, So I'm thankful that I have the network of people that, like Tim Bratz, we're both in the legacy family. I value his experiences because he talks openly about his failures. And I think that everyone has a responsibility to share your failures with other people so that they don't make the same mistakes. Yeah. But it also takes the wisdom of the receiver of that information to know how to implement it. So I'm just trying to be conscious of implementing other people's advice about mistakes that they've made so that I don't make the same ones.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love it. And I mean, only advice I have there is I didn't leave my W-2 career until my kids were 11 and 6. And so 11 years of my daughter's life was just fitting her in when I could, because I was grinding so hard at my career. And now she's 13, she's starting to mature and understand things, and we can have these open conversations about, I used to do this, but now I do this, and I do it because of this, and y'all are the biggest part of that. And I everything gets prioritized under them, my wife and kids, and that's my wife and I was recording an episode yesterday with another guest, and I was talking about every Sunday we sit down and we fill our calendar up with the family stuff, and all the way down to, like, I'm gonna pick Emma up on Thursday and take her to ice cream, get ice cream, and I block that off in the calendar, and nothing in business is gonna knock that off the calendar. And then I just fill in the gaps with the business stuff. It does two things. It makes me prioritize and be present with the kids, which I want to be, but it forces me to do it by getting it on the calendar. But the biggest fringe benefit of that is the time that I block off to focus on the business stuff. I have to be laser focused, and I struggle with focus, but this forces me to lock in for that 3-hour period of time that I'm doing business. And so it's I could go on for hours about the kids and kind of planning business around
focusing on the urgent and the important, and when you have limited time, it really gives you clarity of like what you should be working on and who you need to be hiring to kind of take over the other things. Yep. And look, for people like you and I, defaulting to a work activity, that's the easy thing to do. Yeah. Right. Like, I got to pick up this phone call and I got to do this, right? Because it helps move the needle. Being intentful about your time and putting it into those windows is absolutely probably one of the most difficult things to do, because my personal phone and my business phone are the same number. Yep. So you're like attached to the phone all the time. One thing I actually did for this year, I actually started it in December, was I deleted Instagram and Facebook from my phone. Mm-hmm. I still have it. I still use it, but only when I'm on the computer because it's supposed to be a work tool, right? Content creation, a contributor, not a consumer.
Right.
Um, and what that really has kind of opened up is like, I'm not looking for my phone all the time now. Like if it's on the counter, I don't care. But
Right.
before, when it had social media, I had to have it on me all the time.
Mm.
And it's just like, wow, all the things people talk about, social media being addicting and things like that. But long story short, what that helps me do is be intentful with the time that I'm in front of my daughter. I'm not like sitting there playing with my phone. I'm like, playing with her toys, reading the books, and like, doing all the things. And that smile when she looks at you and she's, she, she knows how to say cheese now. She goes, so it's the, it's like, it's the cutest thing ever. It's like, if you didn't pay attention to that, you'd miss it. And that's one thing in life I don't want to regret is I don't want to regret missing the important milestones in my children's lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And I didn't have my dad growing up. So, that's a big motivator too. I don't want them to go through that same situation. And real quick, one thing I did, we were in Boston. You were in Boston, right? At the Legacy event. So, the whole family's there, and we came up, I think 2 days early just to kind of explore the city and all that. For 2 straight days, not only did I not look at my phone, I left it in the hotel room. We walked out at, say after breakfast and stuff, we walked out of the hotel at 9, and both days didn't come back till well into the evening. I didn't even want it on me. And that was tough because you're so used to every few minutes just making sure an email hadn't come in or a text or something like that. But what it proved to me, Tim, is most of the stuff that's chaotic in my business is on the heels of me creating chaos. So I send a lot of outreach. I send a lot of messages. I make a lot of calls. Well, for 2 straight days, I didn't do any of that. Therefore, there was not much response coming in and not much chaos in my business. And at the end of the day, I just kind of checked my emails, answered to them, whatever. But there wasn't much I missed. And since that was in June of 24.
Yeah, it's Father's Day weekend.
Yeah. Since then, I have been very intentional. Just like you said, I come home, my phone goes over to the nightstand. I do not touch it until the kids are in bed, and sometimes I'm going to peek at it before bed, but it is out of sight, out of mind. So the temptation to grab it's not even like it doesn't exist. I can't grab. And
it's incredible.
The weekends I do the same thing. We went, my son wrestles, and his weekend wrestle tournaments. I will go there. I'll leave the phone in the vehicle. Like I don't even want it on me. My wife will take all the pictures and videos and all that. And it's just, it's a practice that I never thought I would, because I had become so addicted to it, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
On that phone.
Yeah, right. It's right on my desk,
Right.
It doesn't go far.
So I want to, all right, this is a fun question. You mentioned a vision board earlier. Is the Viking Sportfish boat still on there?
So it's not. And it's not because I don't want it. It's because I realize I don't fish enough to make it useful. So the boat vision has changed because the whole thing was I wanted to be able to take the boat from here to the Bahamas and just kind of, hop around in the Bahamas and live on the boat, go fishing for my food. And I just love those sport fishers. My God, they're just absolutely beautiful. But now that I have a family, your priorities change a little bit. And it now looks more like a Grady, Grady White, like with a big cabin on it that you can shut the doors and have air conditioning and all that kind of good stuff. And, you got to make sure there's enough shade for the kids so that, we have a T-top now. We have a center console boat now, and the T-top just doesn't make enough shade for her in the summertime. So, potentially looking at getting a different boat that is more suitable for a young family for next year. And,
right.
The goals change, but, the mindset's still there of like, I want to be able to have a boat that I can live on and go like down in the winter months, like go down to some beautiful tropical places and travel with it. And, I love the water. Like everything I do revolves around the water. I mean, my daughter's name is Coral, like coral reef, if you're questioning. Yes. Cause I love coral. It's one of my favorite colors. So just my whole life, my wife's life, we revolve around the ocean. And it might not be a 72 sport fisher, but it will be a boat that we can do some traveling on and really enjoy it.
Got it. Awesome. And last thing, I want you to take a few minutes to tell everybody about all the different things you have going on community wise where they
Sure.
could pick up on some value or add value to what you're doing. So if you want to run through all that, we'll drop all the links in the notes so people can, reach out to you and connect in those ways, but kind of speak to it a little bit and take it away.
So I have a Facebook group called Making Moves in Multifamily that also kind of piggybacks off the coaching group that we do. We have a very, very, very small coaching group on purpose. There's only about 30 people in it. It's very exclusive, small knit group. I'm not a big fan of big groups. I think that having more personalized FaceTime is important. Also add me as a friend on Facebook, Tim Vitale. I do the StreamYard every Tuesday at 10 a.m. with my business partner, whose also name is Tim. So Tim and Tim, Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And we do a Facebook Live. Last week's one, we're recording this, and I know this won't come out for a couple of weeks, but last week's one was about potential tax impacts for real estate investors with Trump's proposed tax plan for 2025. So that was an interesting one. Go check that out.
I'll share that one ahead of this coming out just because that's pretty timely. So yeah, I'll go to it and you share it out there. So yeah.
But yeah, add me on Facebook. I don't really use LinkedIn a whole lot. My Instagram is Tim Vitale. I think it's at Tim Vitale official or at official Tim Vitale. I can't remember one of those two.
Down there. Yeah.
Yeah, one of those two. And I actually the Joe Rogan podcast with Elon Musk and Trump a couple of months back. Like I actually started using Twitter, which is now called X. So I'm trying to get more active on there. So look me up on there. Is at the Vitalian, Vitalian. So I'm Italian and my last name is Vitale. So the Vitalian. They didn't have at Tim Vitale available, so I had to get creative there.
It's good.
Yeah. So, just reach out. I'm happy to have a conversation with you and talk to you about anything you got going on, or if you're interested in investing in, Tim and I, our primary business model is low income housing tax credit called LIHTC. Nobody else buys LIHTC in the Carolinas that we really know of that provide investment opportunities the way that we do. We acquired 22 properties in 2024 with an average cost basis of $55,000 in the Carolinas. So yeah, we get some access to really incredible deals.
Diving into that. So
oh yeah, our whole property management company is all built around LIHTC because it's difficult to find a LIHTC property management company. So we really found the niche and where we can provide value and have access to deals. And we got a lot coming in 2025, which we're super excited about. And yeah, I think that's a good summary.
It's awesome, man. Well, Tim, I appreciate you taking the time to come on here, man. We went through a lot of your timeline kind of falls right in line with mine as far as like the years that you got into certain things and stuff like that. So it's interesting to hear that. And it's a lot of folks listening to this are at that point that you were and that I was, where like we have the secure job, we have the security of the benefits and all of that stuff, but there's something nagging at us, right? Mm-hmm. Something pulling us, like it's not enough. And fear is usually the biggest barrier to take that next leap. And, Tim's story, and there's many others like it that actually do take the leap, but your story is one of consistency. You sat there for several years doing the same things, making the calls and reading the books from 5 to 7 in the morning and on your lunch breaks, making calls and in the evenings. And you did it without any results for a long time, almost quitting, and then seeing it through, and then the compound effect sets in.
Absolutely.
And I love that story. I want people that, you just got to take action. You got to be consistent with that action, and things start happening. It's just the laws of the world. And so, Tim, I appreciate you sharing all that. We'll put all your links in the show notes. And with that, we'll wrap up another Burning the Ships, and we'll see y'all next time.
All right, man. Well, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity, and it was super. This has been super laid back and super fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, man. We'll keep in touch. Thanks a lot, Tim.
Yay.
Well, folks, another great Burning the Ships story. Tim, just, as many of my guests do, just blow me away with the mindset, right? And how quickly, you hear his timeline, and I kept honing in on that during the interview because I wanted to make a point that, he went essentially from 2019 really diving in and trying to educate himself on everything to leaving his job essentially, 2 years later. And so it can happen fast if you believe in it and you really dig in and stay consistent. So I encourage all of you. Tim has a great social media presence. If you go follow him on Instagram, Facebook, all the things he talked about. He's also on Twitter or X. But go follow along, go find him and follow him. We'll drop all those links down in the show notes. But one of the most valuable things he does, that's, you can see it every week, but every Tuesday, he alluded to it. He goes live with his partner, Tim Vest, and they just talk all things real estate. So if you're into that, and most recently, I recently shared a video they did on kind of the transition of the administrations that we're having right now, and the tax implications we might see as real estate investors from that. So go check that out on his social media. I put it up on mine. Go follow Tim. He's got the Facebook group, and he's got a coaching platform and a couple other things going on. So go check him out. And if you're interested in investing in real estate, but doing so passively, he's a great operator. He's a proven operator. He's built, he talked a little bit about his LIHTC investing, and that's a very interesting niche that he's gotten into, and they are building a powerhouse within it. So it's a great opportunity for folks to invest in that passively. Let a great operator do the work, and you just get to enjoy the returns and watch your money grow, really. So again, thanks to Tim for coming on. It's a great episode, and look forward to seeing you guys and continuing to share what we do on this podcast.